Oh, it's a good one today on the Give First podcast. I've got Robert Wolfe, who is the founder of a company called Zeck. But before that, Moosejaw and CrowdRise. So, really interesting career as an entrepreneur. He's going to share some lessons from those companies, including how to leverage celebrities or endorsers to help your startup be successful and what to look out for. But also, he's going to share some of the lessons learned about really just being yourself, being who you are as an entrepreneur, even if that's a little self-deprecating or a little less serious than you might think you need to be as an entrepreneur. It can create an identity for you and create attachment to your customers. Robert's a great entrepreneur. You're going to hear from him right now on the Give First podcast.
Hi, everyone. This is David Cohen, and I'm here with my amazing co-host,
Brad Feld.
Hey, Brad. And this is the Give First podcast. And in the startup world, Give First means simply trying to help anyone, especially entrepreneurs, without any expectation of getting anything back. So we'll be talking to mentors and founders about what Give First looks like in action and how it makes great entrepreneurship possible.
We polled everyone, and they said consistently that their favorite part of the show was the legal mumbo jumbo. So here it is. The following discussion is an expression of personal opinion and does not represent the opinion of Techstars or any company we discuss. Our conversations for informational purposes only, including any mention of securities or funds. This is not legal, business, investment, or tax advice and is not intended for use by any investor. Certain of Techstars funds own or may own in the future securities in some of the companies discussed in this podcast. Got it? I'm joined today by Robert Wolfe, who is building a company called Zeck, which is super interesting. Robert, I want to give you a chance to say hello and introduce yourself and tell us a bit about your background.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me. Love Techstars. I am crazy enough to have started my third company. So first I started a company called Moosejaw. We sold North Face, Patagonia, brands like that. And we were ultimately acquired by Walmart. And then started a company called CrowdRise, which became the biggest platform to raise money for charity. We're now a part of GoFundMe. And using the lessons and some of the stress and misery from Moosejaw and CrowdRise, we started Zeck, which is reimagining the entire archaic board meeting process.
Which sounds like a super interesting company on this. Actually, it sounds kind of boring. Reimagining a board meeting, right? But it's not, and we're using it. We love it, and I get why it's so powerful. We'll talk more about Zeck as we get going. But I want to maybe learn a little bit more about your background first. Let's start maybe with Moosejaw. A lot of people have heard of that brand. Maybe have the stuff in their closet or wherever.
Awesome.
And what are the biggest things that you learned in that journey of building that company? What were some of the takeaways or lessons from it?
Yeah, I think we got really lucky at Moosejaw that I had absolutely no idea what I was doing when I started and really didn't even know the rules to break. And we had a 1,400 square foot store, and people would come into the store and I would legitimately say, do you want to play home run derby in the parking lot? We had home run derby set up in the parking lot. And I wasn't saying that to try to engage with the customer in a unique way. I actually wanted to play home run derby in the parking lot, right? I didn't even know to say to a customer, hey, can I help you? What that turned into, and when we finally started to understand data and doing this online, is we were doing experiential retail. Before that was such a thing, right? So the idea of embracing your customer, engaging in unique ways, really started off as something that we didn't do purposefully, but ended up being the force behind the business. We ultimately called it nonsensical marketing. And in backpackers and climbers, they take themselves very seriously. And our goal was to make it fun. And then that idea ended up sort of by accident becoming the through line for our next two companies, CrowdRise and Zeck, where we found ourselves in these sort of miserable, stressful spaces and trying to flip them to make them more notable and interesting. Yeah. So for us, finding ways to have meaningful rapport with our customers was the very best lesson throughout all our companies.
And I noticed that today and interacting with you through Zeck. I mean, it's very lighthearted, taking yourself super seriously, but you got a great product that really works. And, comes out in the trivia questions or, all the things that you guys throw at your customers to play with them a little bit. And, you're right. It's just a little bit more fun on something you wouldn't think is going to be fun every day to deal with.
Yeah, I feel like when you think about a board meeting, you don't go to the website and see a Wedding Crashers quote above the fold on the homepage. But part of the idea is that if these meetings can be less miserable, they'll be more productive. And I think that not only the product but the brand has to reflect that. And I'll tell you at our prior company, CrowdRise, our slogan was, if you don't give back, no one will like you. Right. And that was very polarizing. So the very first organization we met with was American Cancer Society. And they quite literally laughed us out of the room. And they said, we will never do this. Right. You can't raise money for a serious cause and not be serious. And our take was very different. We thought, okay, if people actually enjoyed giving back, they would do it more often and raise more money for the causes they cared about. And we ended up becoming the platform that where young people gave back. And this is sort of a nice part of the story, is that 5 years later, these graying organizations said, okay, we have to use CrowdRise. And we became the fundraising platform for American Cancer Society.
Doesn't it? I mean, it's sort of just being who you are, right, as an entrepreneur and letting that show up in your company. And, you're more likable, right, more engageable with your customers. And I remember in the beginning years of Techstars, right, we used to make a lot of these little video series called The Founders. And it was a lot of just poking fun at ourselves. And I would wear the little camera on my head and walk around the office
I
as if
love
that
it.
was like, just getting the point of view of David Cohen, right? Like,
Right.
it just sort of just came off as a joke, which it was, but people found it to be, something they could identify with. It was a little bit self-deprecating, but also obviously funding real companies that were changing the world, right? And so I love the be who you are concept and the through line through all the different companies. When you think about CrowdRise, maybe one of the other things that came out of that, I think, if I know the story right, is the relationship with Edward Norton,
Yeah.
one of your folks that's really involved at Zeck today. And I know a lot of people ask me all the time, hey, David, I need to get some kind of influencer involved in my company. I'm thinking about getting an NBA player or someone to,
Right.
join our team. And I think people would love to hear that whole story, how that came together, and maybe your advice for them in those types of situations.
Yeah, I said it before, and I'll probably say it 5 more times. I'm a big believer in luck, and certainly working with Edward was very and is very lucky for us, and it really came about organically. So I'm friends with, at the time it was Edward's girlfriend, now his wife. Her name's Shauna Robertson, and she is wildly successful. She was Judd Apatow's partner at Apatow Productions, so she made Elf and Anchorman and 40-Year-Old Virgins and all these iconic movies. And we used to drive her crazy at Moosejaw. I would say, "Can we send this jacket to Jonah Hill?" And when we were thinking about trying to do something in the giving space, and when I say we, I mean my brother and me, we thought it would be awesome to get celebrities raising money for the causes they cared about on our platform. And this is something that did not happen in 2010, right? People thought it was tactless to tell people how you give back, but we wanted to flip that and have more of an e-commerce mindset in the giving space. And I actually called Shauna and said, "Hey, what do you think of this idea? And if you're interested, would you want to participate and bring your squad, Seth Rogen and Kristen Bell and Steve Carell, all these, Will Ferrell, all these amazing people she had worked with?" And Edward actually grabbed the phone and said, "I'm raising money for my organization in the New York Marathon." And he didn't quite say it exactly this way, but Edward knew how to go raise $100 million for a theater in New York, but there was never any crowdfunding. And so he said, "Do you want to join my campaign and do it as a case study?" And we, of course, said yes. I ended up running the marathon with Edward. And in that campaign, our goal was to raise $75,000. And we raised 1.2 million. And while Edward would never say this because he's so humble, he was really the first celebrity to be out there on social saying, "Hey, donate money to my cause for a chance to win X," right? A Fight Club poster. And he did that phenomenally well. And that was the first step into launching CrowdRise. And so we've worked together since 2010 and talked to him pretty much every day. And he is, again, you talk about being lucky. He is super smart and relentless. He is an awesome, awesome partner.
Yeah, we did that little LinkedIn Live with him, and he's very deep on this stuff, right? Like
Yes.
you can tell it's not just a thing he's sticking his name on; he actually cares about it,
Yeah.
and he thinks changing the way that the effectiveness of board meetings has such a profound impact on all of us, right? Because
Right.
these companies, these organizations are doing things that are really meaningful and changing the world, and if they're 10% better, right? I mean, that can have a huge impact on everyone every day. So you could really
Yeah.
feel that when you talk to them.
I will tell you about influencers, just to take it one step further. We at CrowdRise, we were the fundraising platform for, I don't want to say all the celebrities, but for hundreds of celebrities. And sometimes it works phenomenally well when you get someone like Chris Pratt or Sophia Bush, who are wildly philanthropic and really care about their cause. They raise millions of dollars, and it has monumental impact on the organizations they're working with. And I could give you a list of so many more. Um, but if they if it's sort of a hired gun, or they take more of a laissez-faire approach, it actually could have a negative impact, because when you get celebrity X out there doing one tweet, and you go to the landing page and you see that it's raised $14, well, then it's okay. Well, if person X can't raise money for this cause, I'm not gonna participate either. So I think I've worked with a few different companies that have done influencers really well and have done it poorly. I would suggest, if the influencer isn't really engaged, I would I would suggest not going down that path and using your money or equity another way.
Yeah, I heard you say 99% of the time it doesn't work out when you just
Right,
attach a personality to the thing you're doing. But I guess the 1%, that magical zone, is when they really do love the thing, care about the thing,
right.
put extra energy into the thing. That then it can be magic, and it seems like it's that way with you guys.
Yeah, very lucky. And again, some of the celebrities and influencers we work with who are just like Eddie Vedder. If you Google Eddie Vedder and see what he does for charity, you will be absolutely blown away. But then there's other names who I won't name, who just did it because it was just a one tweet and they were done, and you never heard about it again.
Right.
That didn't
Yeah.
work.
It turns out that in all things, if your heart's not in it, it doesn't
Right?
really work. Right.
Yeah,
And so
totally.
that's why one of the big things we always coach founders around Techstars into is like, you got to do something you love. It's just too hard otherwise. And it just doesn't work, right?
Yeah.
If your heart's not in it, you're not going to stick it out and go through the hard times, right? So it's a similar. Let's dive a little bit into your current company, Zeck. We are customers at Techstars. We use it to manage our communications around our board meeting, but also some internal processes. We use it for our leadership team meetings. We find it to be a great way to collaborate. It's kind of a different paradigm. What really do you think sets Zeck apart from, say, what most board meetings do, which is like a Google Docs thing or a PDF
Yeah.
thing?
I think there's three there's three major value adds, but one sticks out. When I say it sticks out, I say that based on feedback we get from the community. So the three are: we're saving real time. So particularly when you can follow the workflow that we suggest and embrace Zeck AI, we're getting 80-90% time savings. And then when you multiply that across the amount of time spent not only in a board meeting but investor updates, internal leadership meetings, that time is real, and the opportunity cost of not using Zeck is real. And then also, what was always so frustrating to me is 80% of our traffic is mobile, and you can't read PowerPoint or a PDF or Google Slides on your phone. And
Totally.
even for our first two fundraising rounds, we didn't use Zeck. We built a Squarespace site because there was no chance I was sending all these big shots something they couldn't read on their phone. So you don't wake up in the morning and read your news in a rectangle, right? So we wanted to solve for that. So I think the idea of building something the way that people read and write today was really important to us. But ultimately, it's the collaboration that I think has been most meaningful. So I'll give you a real example. Our most recent Zeck board meeting, prior to the board meeting, asynchronously, our board left 29 comments in our Zeck, right? And that's all secure. Security is table stakes for us. 19 of those comments we resolved prior to the meeting, and the other nine we flagged for discussion. Could you imagine getting into that meeting and having to deal with those 19 comments, how much time would be spent when they could just as easily or more easily be solved asynchronously. So Zeck really allows you to get rid of the homework prior to the meeting so you could spend all your time live talking strategy and it being forward thinking. And our board meetings used to be at Moosejaw, they were a day and a half. At CrowdRise, they were a day. We have a Zeck board meeting on May 22nd. It's scheduled for 2 hours. So you can just be way more efficient.
Yeah, for sure. And when I first heard some of that, before we were using it, I said, oh, yeah, commenting ahead of the meeting, of course, but the reality is that we often, we're maybe suspecting board members not fully reading
Right.
the materials. And that sort of natural thing that happens because it's so hard to read, you've got to be on the computer, it's not, you can't do it in, while you're in the back of a taxi or an Uber somewhere, or all the other places you guys say you can do it that I won't
Right.
repeat.
Yeah.
It's just so easy to do, and you do it on your phone, do it on your iPad, whatever. Now they're much more likely to read it and really be able to consume it fully because it's so readable. And then that makes them more likely to hit the button to ask the question ahead of time, which ends up making the meeting more efficient. For sure, that is something that I didn't expect to have as much impact as it does. And your meetings are just shorter and more, more on point. You get into the strategic stuff faster, which I love.
Right.
But the AI that you mentioned, and this is probably a record, like we're 12 minutes into a podcast and we're only mentioning AI for the first time.
Right.
It's incredible. And I always like to say to all the AI listening, we mean no harm. We're just kidding.
That's right.
What is the AI and how does that get used, for a customer using Zeck? Like, why does that save so much time?
Yeah, part of the goal is to take the reports you're already using to run the business and allow AI to pull data from those reports to tell your story, right? So there's two pieces to it. One, the exact way it works, and I'll tell you, we mandate that our team use the following workflow for all of our internal leadership meetings because it saves so much time. We don't want them spending time building presentations. We want them spending time marketing and driving demos and selling. So we integrate our data for us. We integrate Google Sheets. It's just a button. You literally click sync. That's set up. So that takes a second. You click another button to visualize that data. So the number one piece of feedback we had from our customers in all of 2024, and we are very calculated in how we gather feedback, was we want a better way to visualize our data because doing it in Excel and PowerPoint is a pain in the ass. And it actually doesn't look good on mobile. So we solve for that. So Zeck AI visualizes your data. It's really cool. It works perfectly on your phone. And then lastly, you click another button, optimize, and it takes all of your data set and turns it into your narrative, broken up into what you need to know, highlights, lowlights, key initiatives, what's keeping me up at night, which is the exact framework that our board members at our past companies taught us to use. And now for me, we just had our company all hands last Tuesday. That used to take me probably realistically 2 or 3 hours to put my section together. Now it takes about 15 minutes. And it's better.
It's better. And I use that all the time. I sometimes I'll just write freeform, almost brain dump, and then I'll just have it summarize it. And it's so much more succinct and so much more consumable. And I think the thing that I've noticed is, the board members themselves, rave about it. And a lot of them had used other board, management systems, which are basically just like document repositories. Right. And they were kind of like, another one of those. But then when they started consuming the content and the content was so much better, they're like, wow, this is just totally leveled up. Like one of them actually said to me, I look forward to getting the Zeck.
Oh, that's awesome.
Whoever says I look forward to getting
the
board.
Right. Nobody. Right. Yeah, that's fun.
Like I'm excited to get it because I know it's going to be interesting and I'm going to read it the way I want to.
That's awesome.
You guys have adopted the give first, sort of thing. And we're doing some stuff together around Techstars and sort of, really trying to get this out in front of more of the Techstars companies. Some of the, sort of larger ones are starting to adopt it and it spreads through word of mouth of the board members. Maybe describe a little bit how you think about Techstars, how you're given first and sort of, what we want founders out there to know about Zeck.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of fell in love with Techstars a few years ago because I was a Techstars mentor. And one of the companies that I'm invested in and on the board of is a Techstars company. So having lived through what your founders lived through. I understand how important it is to get advice from people who have failed and learn from it over and over. So I think the model is brilliant. I'm a huge fan, and I've just seen firsthand how impactful it is because I had absolutely no clue what I was doing. And when we first started, my mindset was, I have no idea what I'm doing, and I don't think anyone else does either. And well, I was wrong, right? And when we first raised money, we were kids, and the investor made us get an operating partner. That operating partner taught me more than I would have ever imagined tenfold. And I see Techstars doing that that's part of the model. And so it took me 15 years to get someone like that to help me. And I still, it was a while ago. I still keep in touch with him regularly. He's a mentor and he's amazing. And I think the fact that Techstars brings operators as opposed to people who are purely financial into these companies to help people is such a major difference between the kind of consultants that I had come across my whole life.
And so, what should people do if they want to check out Zeck? I mean, how do they get a demo? Obviously, they just go to the website and learn about it. But
Yeah.
Maybe if they're kind of curious about how to have better board meetings. I mean, I think there's plenty of them maybe listening right now that don't really even necessarily have a board yet and are thinking about putting one together right when they raise their first round. Starting those off the right way with software that Zeck provides. How do they get in touch? How do they check it out if they want to learn more?
Yeah, Zeck.app is the place to go to get a demo. We have lots of people ready, and I do think if you had said to me what's the best thing to happen at Zeck so far, my answer is that companies are organically using Zeck for so many use cases. So we only market the board meeting, we only demo the board meeting, but companies are using it for investor updates when they don't even have a board, or they have advisors and don't necessarily need the governance features, but internal leadership meetings, like I mentioned, fundraising pitches. So I think even if you don't have a board in your very early stage, getting these best practices in place really early is, I think, super important because you can't go fast if you don't have systems to optimize that. And if you can't go fast, your business isn't going to work. So you need systems to help you move quickly. And I think Zeck fits into that really nicely, along with DocuSign and Carta and Slack and I think there's a really awesome tool set out there, and I feel like Zeck is a part of that.
Awesome. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned the shareholder update because I was literally before this podcast that we're recording was working on my first ever annual shareholder update for Techstars. We've got a broader group.
Yeah.
And they've never seen it before, right? But it's a different use case. So I now have 3 different ways I'm using Zeck: board meeting, internal leadership, and now shareholder updates.
Oh, that's awesome.
So it's great. Well, thanks for joining us and letting people learn a little bit about you and sort of some of the takeaways and lessons from your awesome career. Thanks for the Give First around Techstars with Zeck. It's awesome.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot for listening to the show today. We'd love to hear your feedback, ideas, or who you'd like to hear next on Give First. And please leave a rating and review, ideally a good one. And reach out anytime to podcasts@techstars.com or on Twitter, I'm @David Cohen. See you next time. Don't forget, give first.